I'm not surprised, not everything lasts. I've broken my heart so many times I stopped keeping track. Talk myself in, I talk myself out. I get all worked up, then I let myself down. I tried so very hard not to lose it. I came up with a million excuses. I thought of every possibility. And I know someday that
Movies, more than any other media, reflect what society is living. For example, in political manners, the movie La Dictadura Perfecta reflects the political issue here in Mexico. In social aspects, an example would be The Danish Girl, that reflects the LGBT topic within society. And other movies are just pure entertainment, as Zoolander or superhero films. Like any other media, movies have to adapt to changing technology. An example would be the special effects that with time they are more realistic, but they're still expensive.
First, we have Etienne Jules Méry and Edouard Muybridge. Méry and Muybridge worked together in 1882. When they met, Méry perfected a photographic gun camera that could take 12 photographs in one plate, making this the first picture motion camera. Then we have Thomas Edison. Edison bought some of Muybridge's pictures in 1888. Then Edison met Méry in Europe. Méry invited a projector that showed pictures on a continuous strip of film. Next, we have William K. L. Dixon. In America, Dixon perfected the projector by making it less jumpy. He looped the strip over a lamp and a magnifying lens in a box 2 feet wide and 4 feet tall. Edison named this device the kinetoscope. Finally, we have Auguste and Louis Lumière. These French brothers developed an improved camera and a projector that could show film on a larger screen. They first showed this on December the 28th, 1895. The first movies ever, as we all know, were black and white films. It wasn't until the 20s that the sound was introduced, and later, in the 30s, the color was introduced as well. First, we have George Miles. Before being a filmmaker, Miles was a caricaturist and a magician. He found boredom in the theatrical and realistic scenes that filmmakers use for their movies, so he used all of his tricks in his movies. He made people shrink, grow, among many other special effects. Then we have Edwin S. Porter. Edison hired Porter in 1899, and for the next decade, Porter became the most famous American filmmaker. In 1903, Porter produced The Great Train Robbery, which was an action film about bandits attacking a speeding train.
Studio system and independent movie makers flourish. Studio system is when studio owners hire movie stars to work for their company, but they have to sign a contract where they state that they can work for any other company unless that their company approves of it. Biograph was the first company to use this system. This one is the Biograph, the company, and this guy, who is Carl Laemmle, who formed an independent company, stole two important stars from Biograph. First, Florence Lawrence by giving her screen credit, and then Mary Pickford by offering her doubling her salary. Then we have the star system, which is the promotion of a movie star and its personality to the public. Some aspects that connect to this system is when, in 1915, Griffith, the real titan of the silent movies, introduced the first movies of 4 reels long, portraying the topics of civil war, racial stereotypes, and sexuality between the different races. And then in 1916, Noble and George Johnson introduced the race films, the first movies directed to African American. And as we can see, this one is Griffith, the guy that created the silent movies. Okay, now we have movies become big business. After Harry Chandler, he was a landlord that lived in the California state. he had a lot of lands that could be used by a low price. So the movie industry moved from New York to LA as we know right now, nowadays. And we have the adoption of block booking, which was when they started creating film industries, people noticed that if they own theaters, they could gain much more money. So what they did was some packages of movies who they sell from, I don't know, it was 20 movies, but 5 of them were from like important movie stars and the other ones weren't. But people were attracted to the important ones, so they bought all the movie package, so they were able to watch it. In 1919, the United Artists were founded by Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, and D. Doyle Griffith, which was a company that was the first independent company, as to say, and they produced movies which are really popular nowadays: The Three Musketeers, Robin Hood, and The Mark of Sorrow. After that, due to a lot of criticism from the public to stars and the content of the movies, Motion Picture Association of America was created, which involved just taking care of the actors and actresses and of the producers themselves. So they created these 3 principles. And finally, we have the introduction of sound, which were the first movies that were not silent, that included sound. And an interesting fact about this was that it all started in 1927, but for 1930, almost just 22% of the theaters have silent movies, and to 1933, so in less than 3 years, just 1% of the movies were silent. So it was a quick change in the industry.
Now I will talk to you about Big Five studios. In the 1930s, there were 5 studios that dominated the movie industry: Warner Bros., Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Paramount, RKO, and 20th Century. They had a lot of power in the industry because they were in charge of producing the movie, distributing movies, and also they owned movie theaters, so they were sure their movies were going to be shown. The only successful Hollywood newcomer was Walt Disney. He released the cartoon Steamboat Willie, and years later, he released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was a hit. The only thing that affected the industry was the Great Depression, which affected the whole United States.
There were rules you never told me, never came up with a plan.
The first films that appeared in Mexico were 1-minute films, and they were silent. The film industry took off in Mexico in the 1930s due to the political stability and peace achieved at the time. The first talking movie was released in 1931, and it was an adaptation of Federico Gamboa's novel Santa. Mexican films in the early decades of the 20th century were often concerned with nationalistic themes. This was a response to other nations, especially the US, that often portrayed Mexicans as drunks and criminals. From 1915 to 1920, under Venustiano Carranza's government, filmmakers were encouraged to express national pride, including celebrations of Mexico's history, culture, and landscapes. During the 1930s, the Mexican film industry achieved considerable success with movies like La Mujer del Puerto, Janitzio, Dos Monjes, Allá en el Rancho Grande, and Vámonos con Pancho Villa. Despite antagonism towards the U.S. displayed in some Mexican films, in the 1940s, a close relationship between Mexican cinema and Hollywood was born. The major reason for that was the dominance of Mexican films in the Spanish-speaking world from the 1930s to the 1950s. Hollywood helped Mexico develop the technology to produce talking movies at a time when many other countries were still producing silent movies. It was in the 1940s that the full potential of the film industry developed in Mexico. This period of tremendous growth in the film industry that Mexico experienced was during the World War. Hollywood's lack of production of entertainment films created a new demand for Mexican films, not only domestically but throughout the Western Hemisphere. Mexico dominated the film market in Latin America for most of the 1940s, without any competition from the US film industry. During the World War II, movie production in Mexico tripled. In 1948, Nosotros los Pobres, directed by Ismael Rodriguez and starred by Pedro Infante, was released. It's known as the most popular Mexican film of the Golden Age. Among the biggest Mexican film stars in the 1940s and the 1950s were Cantinflas, Pedro Infante, and Maria Felix. The Mexican film industry declined in the mid-1950s. One problem was that success had led to increased competition with Hollywood, which began to distribute fewer Mexican films. The revival of the Mexican film industry began in the 1960s, with a new generation of radical filmmakers and the creation of Nuevo Cine Mexicano in the 1990s.
And I promise you, kid, that I'll give so much more than I get. I just haven't met you yet. I might have to wait, I'll never give up. I guess it's half timing and the other half's luck. Wherever you are, whenever it's right, you'll come out of nowhere and into my life. And I know that we can be so amazing. And baby, your love is gonna change me. And now I can see every possibility. And somehow I know that it'll all turn out. And you'll make me work